Also out this week, well, actually, it opened on Tuesday, and it's playing sort of selected dates. It's going to come out on DVD in about sort of 3 or 4 weeks, is Soul Boys of the Western World.
Spandau Ballet
Now,
documentary time.
Here's how this happened. I found out about this from you because Gary Kemp, somebody came on the show, on your show. Was it Gary Kemp?
Yes, we had Gary Kemp and Tony Hadley.
So you saw it before me, and you said
John the drummer.
And you said, "Are you a Spandau Ballet fan?" And I said, "No." And you said, "Well, there's this very interesting documentary. You ought to see it." So it's a documentary about the life and times of Spandau Ballet, enormously aided by the fact that just presuming there are some listeners who don't know, Spandau Ballet were the kind of the front runner of the new romantic movement in the late 1970s, early 1980s. They came out of a club called the Blitz, which was full of people who sort of dressed up as if they were in Berlin in the 1930s. There was a kind of Liza Minnelli sort of cabaret thing going on, and it was one of these scenes where after you'd had punk and everybody smashing the system, people decided not to smash the system but actually to dress up with tea towels over their shoulders and wear kilts. And Spandau Ballet kind of emerged. Steve Strange was running one of the clubs, and I imagine that John Fox and Ultravox were playing around about that time.
Excellent.
with Midgeo.
Third reference.
And out of this came this band that were called a number of things. They were called Gentry, and they finally emerged as Spandau Ballet. And because an awful lot of what the band was doing was to do with look how great we look. There's a lot of talk in the documentary about, we were working class boys, and whereas it was all the middle class kids who were wearing scruffy jeans and, trying to dress down, we were working class kids and therefore we were trying to dress up. But because so much of it's to do with what they look like, there's a staggering amount of news footage, including a programme which I remember being broadcast, a London weekend television programme that was produced by Janet Street Porter and included an incredibly young Danny Baker. So there's a huge amount of archive footage of the band, and then what we get is, rather than getting on-camera interviews with them, we get their voices talking us through the archive, sometimes sounding like they're talking spontaneously, at other times talking like they're reading from a script, but giving us a pretty full picture of the life and times of Spandau Ballet. Here's a clip.
Everyone at the Blitz was a designer or a writer or a filmmaker. We all had a million ideas and we talked about them all night long. We felt we were establishing a creative manifesto for the 80s.
There was one day when Steve Douglas said to me, "I'm managing a band." I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I've got a band. You come up with a name, you write the first review, we'll be a famous pop group, you'll be a writer." It worked.
And that, of course, is Robert Elms.
That's the pithiest clip we've ever had.
I know, but it's
good.
But I thought it was quite nice because it's sort of pretty much something. So anyway, that's exactly what happened. There's a lot of stuff in it about how everyone who was at the Blitz thought they were already stars. And you see all these films. There's Marilyn is there. Marilyn the pop star.
Yes.
Well, fleetingly the pop star, who I think was on the Feed the World record, because they all end up doing the Feed the World record, and then they all end up doing the Live Aid broadcast. And the film follows them, from their sort of fairly humble origins through this stuff with the Blitz, through making it big, becoming a big band, going on tour, going off to all these exotic places, having rivalries with Spandau Ballet. Gary Kemp...
Rivalries with Duran Duran.
Rivalries with Duran Duran, beg your pardon. And because Spandau Ballet was a phrase that Robert Elms had seen spray painted on a wall in a toilet in Berlin.
Do you think people in general know what Spandau Ballet is?
Well, Spandau is the prison where...
Yes, but do you know what Spandau Ballet is? What it means?
No.
It's it's slightly distasteful, but it's the same as the Tyburn jig. It's basically
I don't know what that is either.
The gyrations and... of the hanged, basically.
I never knew that. In fact, the documentary never explains that.
No, probably.
I kind of wish I didn't know that now.
So, and it would be the hanged in Spandau prison, and that's what. And when you were hanged, you performed the Spandau Ballet.
Did you bring that up with them? Did they know that? Because the way it's described in the thing is that Robert Elms saw it spray painted on a toilet wall and thought that looks cool. And that's then what they became.
And the Tyburn jig was exactly the same thing. So if you hanged in Tyburn, that was the...
Fine. Well, that's not in the documentary, no. but thank you for telling me. Anyway, then, of course, what happens is they do, 3 or 4 albums. They become really big, tour the world with tea towels over their shoulders. And then they all fall out with each other. Spectacularly. And they all end up in court with everybody attempting to get royalties from Gary Kemp, who was the songwriter. And the case ends really badly, and the careers are all in various bits. And then sometime later, Gary Kemp decides that actually what they need to do is to is to kind of come to some sort of resolution.
Well,
Which they do.
and he says he broke up the band, so he thought he would put the band back together.
Again. Here's what I like about the documentary. Firstly, I don't own any Spandau Ballet records. I was never a fan of that music. I mean, it's not for me. I was the wrong age. I was exactly the person who thought that people dressing up in kilts and doing that was just like, I'm not interested in that at all. So I am not. Although I think that Gary Kemp is a brilliant songwriter, it's just not for me at all. And what the film did, I said this about the Dr. Feelgood movie. I said, a really good documentary will make you interested in the subject, whether or not you have any interest in the subject. And I thought that what Soul Boys of the Western World did, which I imagine is a play on, Playboys of the Western World, what it managed to do was to make you interested, even if you weren't interested in the band. And actually, I found it gripping. And I sat there and I watched it with my better half, and we both went into it thinking we're not Spandau Ballet fans. Both come out thinking, well, that's a really interesting story, jolly well told. It does clearly owe a debt to Julian Temple. I mean, Julian Temple's use of old British movies when he was doing the feel-good stuff, that is a very Temple-esque thing.
Did you flounce around in lace afterwards?
No, because I have no desire. I mean, it's still not something that works for me. I'm not a fan of that music. I'm certainly not a fan of those clothes. And the hair is just unspeakable. By the time they get to doing some of those big stadium gigs, I mean, Bono's mullet is but nothing compared to what your man Martin Kemp is wearing, but it's I thought it was a good story, well told, benefiting from the fact that there is a massive amount of early archive footage, and it does go into just enough detail about them all falling out, and it has a nice ending, and at the end of it you think, what, good for them. I liked the documentary. It was a good watch.